Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I had my microphone muted, so I guess you
Good.
couldn't hear me.
No. All right. So welcome. Just I'm here obviously to answer any questions that you may have or go over anything you'd like to go over.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this. It's my 12th class with the AMU, but it's the first time I've had the opportunity to do this. So I think it's pretty cool.
Good. Well, I appreciate. I am.
I actually,
I am recording it just so you know, just in case we cover something that I think the other students might want to know. I can upload that to the classroom. But if it's personal in nature, let me know and I'll turn the recording off. All right.
no, actually, I don't have it. Yeah, that's great. I don't really have any in-depth questions. I really just wanted to try it out and see if it worked
Oh, okay.
and
Well, the
see
biggest
if my
thing.
computer was compatible.
Sure. And what I can tell you is I can give you a real quick and dirty and then it might trigger something else. And I can tell you some of the things that students usually struggle with in this course, grasping it. And by having you live, maybe I can help you get there quicker. Uh, Keep in mind that all the assignments we do in this class are leading toward a final paper. And so
Yes,
each
sir.
each week you're working on only one small piece of that paper. And so as we get
Okay.
toward the end of week 6 and you're starting to work on week 7, you're going to take all those papers that you've written and you're going to merge them together, make any corrections that I've given you in the way of feedback and so forth, make sure they all flow together. That's why you don't necessarily have to repeat yourself every single week. Uh, and if you do, then you just want to clean that out so that it flows as a finished product at the end of the course. The logic here is to pretend like you're an executive at a company and you're being asked to provide a solution, or you're a consultant providing a solution to your client to solve the problem. That's where most students struggle for a while, is understanding that this isn't 6 different papers, it's one paper. We break it up to make it easier for you to basically address the topic. The other thing that people struggle with is that part of the week 1 assignment is, first of all, to clearly distinguish a problem statement. So what's happening is most students tend to bump around. Hey, this is, I'm looking at something that deals with something, but they never really uh, come right out and say the problem statement is. And I would encourage you that as you introduce your topic in your papers, in that week 1's topic, you should be saying, and the problem statement for this research is, and then what is it specifically, so that people can clearly understand what you're trying to research. The other part of the week 1 assignment that students usually miss is to identify who the stakeholders are. So, for example, if this was a company, your stakeholders might be the executive management, it might be middle management, it might be the hourly employees, it might be the vendors, it might be the customers. But there's going to be a group of key stakeholders that care about your problem. So, whatever the problem is you select, who is it that that matters to? And then each week, as you go through the topics that are required for that week, you're supposed to say, here's the material for this week's topic as it relates to the problem. This is what it means. And oh, by the way, this is how this impacts this stakeholder and this stakeholder and this stakeholder. They will not all have the same reaction to the problem you're dealing with. The customer is going to have a totally different perspective than the vendor. And senior management's going to have a totally different opinion than lower level employees. So that's the other part that people struggle with, is understanding what a stakeholder is, and that you really need to address that every single week, explaining what that week's topic means to the stakeholders and what your information means to the stakeholders.
Okay.
Other than that, it flows week to week, and it should make sense as you're reading it. I've opened it up so you can see all of the week's assignments for the whole course, so you can see how the parts fit together. So does that
Yeah,
help
I noticed
maybe?
that. Yeah, yeah, it does help some. Definitely expands on your instruction. I think it was pretty thorough, though. I read
Mhm.
through. I spent a good 2 days reading through everything last week.
Right.
So there's definitely plenty of instruction, and I think you made everything really
Thank
clear.
you. As you know, a lot of students don't bother reading the instructions, and that's
yeah, I learned the hard way that if you don't read the announcements in the forums and the lessons, really a lot of your answers are in the lessons.
Exactly.
I learned the hard way. If you don't read everything, you usually miss something,
Yeah.
or you're going to miss a lot. So yeah, the only thing I did notice, the feedback you gave me on my paper said I was missing a management theory reference.
Correct. If you look at the grading rubric, which by the way,
there it is. Okay. Yep.
it stays the same for every single week. It never changes. The very first one says you need to have one reference that talks about leadership or management as a theory. So for example, if you're dealing with a problem, and I frankly don't remember what your problem was, but let's say your problem was that your vendor is not providing you with adequate raw materials and they're having defects. Well, then your management theory might be something you learned early on about how to deal with just deconflicting or with a supply chain management or something like that. So there's every week you're required to have at least 3 references. One has to be one that's talking about leadership and management, and how you would tie that is when you're giving advice to the leadership of the company each week, a theory that supports what you're saying. The other 2 are scholarly references. Now, scholarly is defined as being a reference that's been peer reviewed. And many of the military students have problem with that because a lot of their work is not peer reviewed. So I don't pay a whole lot of attention to whether or not it's peer reviewed as much as I do is it something other than just searching the web and coming up with a web link type of scenario. So you're looking for at least 3. The other thing to keep in mind is the APA rule about references. You're not allowed to have a reference in your paper that's not cited within the body of the paper. So it's not enough just to put them in the reference and say, hey, I read these references. You actually have to have a citation in your paper that ties to that each of those 3 references.
Oh yeah, I definitely understand that.
Okay,
and I did. So yeah, that makes it clear now. I understand more about the management theory versus just the leadership. So
and
that'll help.
And I cut you slack. I didn't take all the points off for that item. I take enough.
I definitely noticed.
I take enough to get your attention, but not enough to hurt you. And anything above an 80 in that first week's paper will not impact your final grade as long as you do everything right from that point forward. So whenever I have that, and the point I'm trying to make is because I've said in the announcements, go look at the rubric, and you'd be surprised how many students never read the rubric. And so if there's something in the rubric that what I recommend is print the rubric out, keep it because it doesn't change from week to week, and each week use it as a checklist. If you include it and you do it marginally effectively, you're going to get most, if not all, the points. All right.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Anything else?
No, I can't really think of anything else. I'm still reading over this week's lesson and required reading. I did get the announcement on the Word doc with all the links. So that helped because I know a lot of times links get broken, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and so what I try to do is I try to give them to you so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. I'm getting ready. Once I finish the required reading, I'll be writing, this week's forum post. I like to try and get it done as early in the week as I can, but obviously after I do all the reading, though. I'm trying to pull it up right now. Just 1 second. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Hopefully there's nobody else waiting right now.
No. You'd see their names if they were. Right now, you're the only one in the room.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I get personalized instruction.
And I will be here every week.
So in the business world, it said, okay, in your business experience,
Mhm.
obviously I've been in the military 21 years,
Sure.
so I haven't, but still, I mean, what I was thinking about talking about was some preparations we did for a deployment.
Hmm.
And one of the key points, we decided not to push the issue of manning. And then when we got to our deployment, we realized we were completely undermanned and we were working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week,
Right.
because we didn't bring enough of a certain specialty. So would that meet the requirement of a business experience?
It will, as long as as long as it's a problem that you can crisply identify and you can make it sound like, they failed to adequately study the necessary staffing requirements. And then,
Okay,
I'm sorry, I've got a cough from allergies.
no worries. No worries.
And so then when you go through each week, you're going to want to be dealing with management issues as far as it pertains to properly staffing the unit, how that applies to the workflow and so forth. And the best thing to
Okay.
do, if you've already read the problem statements for the rest of the course, and you can see yourself able to provide that information, then it should be fine. But that's why if you just go into the assignment link and take a few minutes and just read each of the week's assignments as you progress through the course, and think about your problem statement. And as long as you're going to have access to that type of information, then you should be fine.
Okay.
I do.
Well, oh, good.
So I do try to work with the military folks that don't have manufacturing. But what you might want to do is talk about if the problem is staffing and they didn't adequately study for it to figure out what it was, then maybe your problem is not necessarily low staff, that was the byproduct. The real problem was that
Mm-hmm.
leadership did an ineffective job of studying the requirements of the mission. So be careful you don't
Okay.
study the end result instead of the real problem. So the real problem is
Yeah.
really that leadership did not adequately map out and address what the deliverables were, what the requirements were. They didn't do a strategic plan, and that resulted in lower staffing. So that might help you tie it to some of the topics you're going to see later in the course if you deal it in that realm. And so what I try to tell the military folks is before you get too far into it, go read each of the problems that you're going to deal with each week
Mm.
and make sure your problem's going to be able to
Okay.
address those. Okay?
Okay. Now, as far as the Manning debacle that I was talking about, I was just speaking for this week's forum post,
Yeah.
not for the
Okay. I
overall
thought you
thought.
meant for the paper. Yes. Yeah, that would be fine. What we're looking
Okay.
for this week is we're looking for people that made erroneous assumptions, didn't properly think things through. And that's basically what you're saying is that they just assumed that, they didn't
Yeah.
analyze it. They didn't take the time to statistically figure out, what, if this is our mission, what's the staffing requirements?
Yeah. And the funny thing is I remember when it happened. It was in 2016 when I was in Korea.
Uh-huh.
They just went off of the previous deployment to the same place. They didn't look at what the mission was going to be when they were there.
And whether it changed.
So so we dropped about 4 times as many live munitions, and it was planned. It was an exercise.
Right.
So they knew we were going to be busier, but they just copy and pasted manning requirements from a previous deployment.
Right.
Unfortunately, I didn't get added till the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I found out about it, we were already on a plane out of there, heading to our deployment. So I think it'll be easy to write about this week for the forum.
Yeah. It should be. I don't think you'll have a problem with that kind of a topic.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your
Yep.
your time. I wish more professors would have done this.
Well,
and hopefully, you know,
when you do the after action at the end of the course, put that in there because they do read them and they look for
yeah,
best practices to try and get people to try new things. So if you end up liking it, and I'm going to
okay,
be doing this between now and week 6, and I've rotated the times and the dates of the week to try and make it easier for people to be able to get to me. I've not left it all at the same time because there are people that won't make it every time. And then like I said, I've recorded this and I'm going to upload this into YouTube, and then I'm going to post a link and tell people that if they want to listen and get the same information you got, to go ahead and listen to it.
all right, that'll be great.
All right. Okay.
All right, well, thank you again for your time, and
Thank
have a
you.
great night.
Yeah, you too. I look forward to seeing you in class.
I'm sure I'll be back. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.